to receive an epic hero, Janoru, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, 1 ancient shard to summon the champion as soon as you enter the game. Start your adventure in Raid Shadow Legends. The most likely successor of Caesar seemed to be his co-consul at the time of his assassination. His loyal and capable military commander, Mark Antony, who was now the most senior official of the state. Antony also obtained the documents and decrees of the deceased leader from his wife, which meant that he now also inherited the mantle of Caesar's dictatorship. But in such volatile times, political balances were extremely delicate. Mark Antony was able to dominate the political situation in Rome for only a short time before a collation among Caesar's assassins and as the supreme leader of the state. Trying to strike a balance between appeasing the senatorial faction and the Caesarians, who had just won a 5-year-long civil war, Mark Antony issued an edict as consul to convene a meeting of the Senate, during which an amnesty was declared for the assassins under the condition that the Caesarian status quo would be upheld. Part and parcel of this deal was the ratification of Caesar's acts, which meant that Antony would have to abandon Italy and take over the province of Macedonia, which was assigned to him after his 1-year term as a consul expired. This was a serious problem for Mark Antony, because even though the province was rich and manned by 6 legions that was mobilized by Caesar for a planned campaign, it was far removed from the capital, the epicenter of political developments. He instead preferred the affluent province of Cisalpine Gaul, from which he could oversee Rome and intervene in case of an emergency. The only problem was that a different governor had already been selected for Cisalpine Gaul, Decimus Iulius Brutus, who was in possession of the province and had 3 legions under his command. Antony toiled to change Caesar's settlement of the provinces, irregularly passing a law under which he would displace Decimus Brutus, who was, after all, one of Caesar's assassins, as proconsul of Cisalpine Gaul instead of Macedonia for 5 years, while retaining the legions that were currently stationed in Macedonia. Naturally, Decimus Brutus objected and refused to surrender his province, claiming that Antony's law was illegal. Taking things a step further, and in defiance of Antony's ultimatum, he marched his legions at the edge of his province, even winning a few victories against local Alpine tribes. The Senate's stance during all of this was opportunistically passive. Cicero might have not protested Antony's actions, but he was surely biding his time, waiting for the right moment to mobilize the Senate against the Caesarian consul. An imponderable factor that would tip the scales of fortune was lurking just around the corner. It was someone that up until then, neither side was taking seriously: the young Octavian. Caesar's nephew and legitimate heir was an unknown entity, with no connections in the Senate and few acquaintances in the army. Armed with an illustrious name and a piece of paper, the young man, despite the counseling of almost everyone around him, put himself in the eye of the storm of Roman politics. While in Rome, Octavian failed to persuade Antony to relinquish Caesar's money to him, but he managed to win support from Caesarian sympathizers and many of the Optimates, including Cicero, who saw Octavian as the lesser evil and was certain that he would be able to manipulate the young man. Meanwhile, Antony set out for the city of Brundisium to greet 4 legions arriving from Macedonia. The veterans were to be used as a bargaining chip with the Senate and as a battering ram against Brutus. It was now that Octavian sprang into action. With Antony away in southern Italy, he went down to Campania with a company of wagons loaded with cash, touring the colonies that were established for Caesar's demobilized veterans. Caesar's young heir was able to convince almost 3,000 veterans to join his cause by blatant bribery and by appealing to their general's memory. The band of carpetbaggers marched on Rome and even occupied the Forum, hoping for a meeting of the Senate that would back Octavian's cause. But the young man's bravado failed to rouse enough support to his side, and he was soon forced to retreat north, while many of his veterans now abandoned him, not prepared to face fellow Caesarian comrades that were fast approaching from the south. Just as everything seemed lost for Octavian, he received unexpected news. Two of Mark Antony's legions marching north declared for Octavian. Turning westwards, took up a position at the town of Alba Furgens. Apparently, Octavian's official name, Gaius Julius Caesar, was still irresistible to many veterans who saw the young man as a spiritual successor to their deceased general. And just like that, the fortunes of Roman politics changed in an instant. Antony tried in vain to convince the defectors to change their decision, eventually resolving to hurry north to Cisalpine Gaul with his remaining 3 legions in an attempt to force Brutus to abandon the province. The Senate, led by Cicero, now ordered Brutus to stay where he was, who chose to barricade himself with 3 legions in the city of Mutina, which was soon besieged by Mark Antony. A clash seemed inevitable. The Roman world was once again embroiled in open civil war. On January 1st, 43 BC, the Senate voted in favor of Octavian's former action, awarding him the imperium of procurator, thus legalizing his private army. In a stroke, Octavian turned from an opportunist who just attempted a failed coup to the hero of the Republic who would save Rome from Antony's tyranny. It was the end of the year, which meant that Antony's term as consul expired. Even though a showdown now seemed inevitable, the Senate was cautious and sent envoys, urging Antony to lift the siege of Mutina and abandon Cisalpine Gaul. But, expectedly, Antony's terms were unacceptable. The Senate declared Antony a public enemy and instructed the new procurator to cooperate with the newly elected consuls, Aulus Hirtius and Vibius Pansa, 2 former Caesarians that were now collaborating with the Senate. In February 43 BC, the consul Hirtius with 2 legions recalled veterans marched north to Ariminum, where they linked up with the 2 legions of Octavian. From Ariminum, Hirtius and Octavian advanced along the Via Aemilia, engaging in a series of skirmishes against Antonian forces that they were able to repulse, occupying Platanae. The 2 commanders advanced even further along Via Aemilia, passing Bononia and camping just a few miles away from Mutina in early March 43 BC. Mark Antony was forced to fall back again, seeking to strengthen the encirclement of Mutina. In the meantime, the other consul, Vibius Pansa, who had recruited and mobilized 5